very much. I first want to say thank you to all of you for having me and taking time out of your day. I understand spring break officially sort of starts right about this time, so I was expecting maybe 8 people, because that's what we would have on our campus today. But I do appreciate the opportunity to come down. You have to bear with me. I have a cold. I can't hear out of this ear all that well, so I don't know if I actually sound like I'm hearing up here, but I sound terrible in my own head, so you'll have to hang with me. I apologize. I'm at Penn State University. It's very different than the University of Pennsylvania. Everyone makes that mistake. Everybody says that. Penn State is a very large institution. We're a public institution, although I would call it a quasi-public, as probably most of you realized, diminishing resources from the state, always attacking our bottom line. And really what we're up to is really trying to find new ways to engage students in what I'll call a new classroom conversation. So while I am outside of the, sort of the context of what you do here in this college, I sort of see technology as a horizontal that runs throughout curriculum across the board. It's no longer this vertical stack that you can say it's a computer science issue. It's really something that's an issue that challenges all of us. And we're going to look today at a little bit about what our students are all about, what we're talking about. I am going to take a little break and talk a little bit about the history of the web, part 1 and part 2, and we'll look at that. I'm going to try to give you some new perspectives on old conversations, and that's going to be really around a philosophical bent of openness and collaboration and agility. And I'm going to spend most of my time, though, talking about 3 trends in information technology that we try to keep our eyes on, we try to watch at Penn State, and try to understand what it's all about. So, and then hopefully there's time for discussion, but if there are questions or thoughts that you have in the middle of it, please feel free to raise your hand and ask. I'm sure that I'll give the folks trying to capture it on video fits by not being able to hear. I'll repeat your questions and things like that. So I'm an administrator at Penn State, so people use the A word to describe me quite a bit. And, and Penn State is a huge institution. We have 25 campuses, 90,000 students, that's our student population. At University Park, where my group is situated, we have about 45,000 students, about 5,000 faculty, another 500 to 7,500 staff members. So it is a large institution with the challenges of scale. And so everything that I'll share with you today, when I come up with these things and my staff comes up with these things to challenge students, the first thing my CIO says to me is, can you scale it to meet the needs of all of our students? And that means understanding how to reach 25 locations. Some of them are 7 hours apart from one another, right? So it's an immense challenge. People also use the F word to describe me. I also have a faculty appointment, and so I get to teach, which is really awesome, right? Because I get to work with my staff to dream up this stuff, and then we go in the classroom and we can actually try it. So we get this living laboratory kinds of things. So before I want to get started here, what I want to do is 2 things. A lot of the statistics I'm going to share with you today come from 3 primary sources. Pew Internet and American Life Project. If you don't know Pew, it's an absolutely amazing place to gain real insight into net generation, the millennials, students, teen use of technologies. The Kaiser Family Trust, another incredibly just rich wealth of opportunities. And then our own FACAC surveys, our Faculty Academic Council on Academic Computing, which is sort of a strange title, but we've been looking at faculty, staff, and student uses of technology for 25 years in a very systematic way at Penn State. And so we ask all sorts of questions, and a lot of what you'll see here comes from that as well. So the next thing here is, this is a message from another administrator that I want to share with you. And let's just take a look at it. So this is a guy thinking about starting his own new university, and then we'll talk about it there.
I find that education, I think it don't matter where you go to school. Italy, America, Brazil, all of the same. They call it this memorization. No matter how long to remember it takes, just so you can parrot it back for the test. And I got this idea for a school I would like to start. Something called the 5-minute university. And the idea is that in 5 minutes, you learn what the average theology is the answer to the question, where is God? And the answer is, God is everywhere. Why? Because he likes you. That's kind of a combination of the Disney and Roman Catholic philosophy. It's just as perfect for the late 70s or early 80s, you know? Just as perfect. Well, after the courses are all over, then it's time for a little Easter vacation. No time to go to Fort Lauderdale. Only lasts about 20 seconds. But what I do for you, I like to turn on the sun lamp. You know, I give you a little glass of orange juice. That's for the snack part, orange juice. And then after vacation, you know, after you swallow real quick, then it's a time for the final exams. I say to almost thou stand, you say muy bien. Where is God? The God is everywhere. Economics supplying the man. Then I put on your cap and a gown. I get out to my Polaroid camera, you know, make a little snap and flash pictures for you. I give you the picture, you give me $20, I give you the diploma, and you're a college graduate, ready to go. I'm not as sure, but I'm pretty sure, right next door to the Fine Arts University, I'm going to open up a little law school. You know, you got another minute?
You know, and I should just show the whole thing because I'm sorry I got to come back, but it's funny for a very important reason, right? Because it's true, right? You know, and a lot of times I show this, and faculty and administrators and people sit in the audience, and they laugh sort of nervously and look around at one another, and they think, God, this is my experience, and there's actually a reason I show that, and it's because, you know, I think it's time we rethink some of this stuff. And maybe that there's something related to the idea that we're trying to prepare lifelong learners now. And it's not about the 5-minute university anymore, and it's not about parroting back facts. And we're going to look at some different ways to think about how we structure what we're doing. But let's start with who we're talking to, okay? So who we're talking to, and I'm going to use a played-out term, the digital natives, right? These are kids that have grown up literally with technology. And, you know, you think about the fact that our average college student now was born sometime in the late 80s, if not the 90s, and that's sort of difficult to deal with, I know, but it's true. And you know, they have these characteristics where it's okay to be smart, and they're engaged, and they actually know how to communicate, and they collaborate. And it's so funny because just a few years ago we were all asking each other these questions of, well, they're on their cell phones all the time, they're on iChat all the time, they're going to forget how to actually communicate with one another. But in reality, they've learned how to navigate this structure of just connectedness in ways that you and I really struggle with. I mean, it's actually pretty phenomenal. You look at this, and a lot of faculty I talk with, they say, well, they have sort of this short attention span. And you look at that room there, and that's what their dorm rooms and their apartments look like. And just a couple of years ago, right, this is what our centers looked like, right? We had all this equipment, and we were the privileged ones, and now they have equipment, and they have music devices and recording devices and lenses and cameras and things that they can do all sorts of things. And I'm going to share with you some stats on how much they're actually producing with these things. It's absolutely incredible. And it leads me to this quote, which I think is one of the best quotes out there by Alan Kay, that technology is only technology to those born before technology, right? I mean, you know, I hear a lot of people say, well, they're just sort of swimming in it, like they're like fish. You know, they're natives in this environment. I think of my own daughter who's now 6 years old. She has Webkins. I don't know if you've ever heard of these things, Webkins, but if you're a parent of young kids, you know what Webkins are, right? They're these little stuffed animals that come with a code, and it unlocks this Webkins world. And in the maybe 4 or 5 months since my daughter has Webkins, she understands currency, she's learned how to tell time, she's learned how to count and do addition, and she can spell and read. And yes, she's in kindergarten, and she's learning all this stuff there, but you know, I think it's been accelerated. The one thing she didn't have to learn how to do was navigate Webkins world, right? My wife and I sat down and we were like, okay, how the heck do we use Webkins world? What do I do here? Where do I click? She's like, Mommy, just click here. I mean, just spin the wheel of wow, and you can get 500 Kins cash, right? And so to her, it's not technology. She knows that the tray that comes out of the the CD-ROM tray is not for your coffee mug. She knows that stuff, right? You put the disc on that, Dad. That's how you rip your MP3s and put them on your iPod, right? And they have intense expectations, and this is something that's really challenging us in Central Information Technology and as educational technologists, is that this first thing is something that this thing, the iPhone, I saw a couple people, as soon as you have an iPhone and you walk in a room, you got to whip it out. Slide your finger on it. Yeah, that's my iPhone. It's pretty awesome, right? Right? Aren't I cool? They don't think it's cool. They just have them, right? They just walk around with them. And it's this invisible layer of access to for all their devices. They don't care where they get their information. They just want it. Just bring it. And they want it mashed up. They want their education information. They want to know what they got on their test. They want to be able to text message their faculty member, although I'll tell you what they think about email and who they email with in a minute. And they want it to be as easy as they can do on the outside. We're going to look at Facebook and MySpace and talk about how much time they spend in those environments. And then we wonder why they don't want to use our corporate or our university-wide LMS and CMS tools. Well, just use Blackboard to make a website. Well, why can't I just give you my MySpace page, right? Because it's easy out there. It's not difficult like it is. And they just want it all integrated in a way that's meaningful. And they want something that I'm not giving you. They want something beyond the death by PowerPoint classroom presentation. They demand it, as a matter of fact. More and more they're demanding it. And interestingly enough, for the first time in my time at the university, 10 years, I've seen faculty coming to me and saying, I want to do more than death by PowerPoint in my classroom. What's this mean? How does it fit? How do we do all these things? Because they're being exposed to how easy it is on the outside as well. So I think that one of the reasons why this is the case is the whole media ecology. And I've adapted this, but I think this is a really interesting look at some things. Remember 1975? A great year, from what I've been told. No, that's not true. I was 3. But anyway, so we have these products, right? And look at this. Look how sparse all this stuff is, right? We have TV stations, news, advertising, how they got to your home. Remember the telephone, the landlines, the real telephones? And remember these telephones with those rotary dials? Yeah. My daughter saw one of these. My parents had an antique one, and she was like, what in the world is that thing? It's the truth. I mean, if you haven't seen these things. Typewriters. What the hell is a typewriter? Broadcast radio, broadcast television. You remember 3 channels? 4 channels? I think there was more on those 3 or 4 channels than there are on the 100 and stuff we have. Displays, local storage, and cassette, 8-track, vinyl, and paper. You guys remember paper, right? Well, this is what this whole media ecology looks like today. And now you have opportunities to do things that you didn't have just 30 years ago. Time-shifting content on the DVR or the TiVo is something that has revolutionized not only the way you watch TV, but expectations. I mean, do you remember before we had Angel and Blackboard and tools like that, students didn't actually expect you to respond to them until the next class period, right? Well, that expectation shattered. Now it's, why haven't you gotten back to me? Well, I just got the email 2 minutes ago. Well, text me, let me know. And you'll notice that local storage and display, the arrows are all going sort of both directions now. It used to be that it actually traveled this way. And now it's going in both directions. And what's terrifying is this is today, we're moving so fast that tomorrow looks more like this, right? Where there's really no differentiation between any of these modes and how things are being put together. It's actually crazy. And it does change everything. How they access information. Search is now research, right? The library. Our libraries on our campuses, to stay relevant, are now turning themselves into social spaces, right? They have media hubs where you can come in and hang out and talk. It's an open environment. It's not built for people to say, shh, be quiet. It's amazing. They're collaborative environments. And how they get their information is Google, and Google Scholar, and Google Books. Well, just Google it, and Wikipedia. And I don't know if you've taught in a room with computers before, and if you say the wrong thing, they raise their hand and say, actually, Cole, the real date is this. And you say, okay. How they access media is another thing. 43% of them listen to radio on something other than a radio. They don't even know what a radio is. iPods don't have radios, so radio doesn't exist, right? So they use their PCs to listen to radio, and that changes a lot of things about what their expectations are. How they control media, we already talked about this, but DVR, TiVo, how many of you have TiVo and DVRs in here? Okay, so then you know. I mean, once you touch it, it's over, right? There's no such thing as a schedule anymore, right? It's just out there, and it's absolutely the way to consume. But then on the other side, how they create media. And almost 20% of our students, 20% at Penn State, you heard my numbers, create media for YouTube, actively create and share media on YouTube. That's stunning, and we'll talk about maybe why that is here in a minute. So are we prepared? And I wanted to share with you just a couple of quotes. So, sometimes I talk about this stuff and people look at me like I'm crazy and it's terrifying. But let's look at some stuff here, okay? So the teacher knows almost as little how to use it as his pupil. And you think, it's got to be the web or the internet or something like that, but you think about the fact that this is what they were talking about in 1840 with the chalkboard. Okay, so we're prepared, right? The existing system is utterly inefficient, right? So what in the world are we talking about here? Well, the overhead projector. In 1856, the magic lantern, as it was called, was the device that was going to change and revolutionize teaching and learning, and it scared the heck out of a lot of people. Living in times of accelerated change, this technology can help boys and girls to be intelligent about important events. It can bring them the good things in life. Look at that, radio was going to change everything in 1940. It's going to make schools so attractive. This is my favorite one right here. A big army with swords and guns couldn't keep the boys and girls out of it. Movies in 1911, right? And for a time, these have all been pieces of the ecology and of the landscape. And we've adapted, and we've had fear, and then we've overcome the fear, and we've addressed it, and we've moved forward with it. But then there's this one, right? And that was in 1980 with computers, and here we are in 2008, and we are still struggling to even get close to any of this stuff. It's taken longer with the personal computer and the birth of the internet for us to really get at meaningful teaching and learning with technology. It's unbelievable. We know how to use chalkboards, and it's interesting when you watch how people teach with chalkboards, it forces teachers to do certain things, right? They have to slow down, right? They have to be master teachers. They can't follow along. You see me, I'm stealing peeks at my slides here to know what it is that I'm going to say. When you're teaching with a chalkboard, it's a whole different universe. And faculty learned how to deal with that as a technology in their classrooms much more rapidly than we have adapted and adopted technology like computers in our classrooms. So before we move forward, let's take a look at the history of the web part 2.0. And I'm going to use Web 2.0. So for those of you in here who are web people and you're sick and tired of hearing Web 2.0, I apologize, but for the rest of you, we're going to find out what it's all about, okay? So you guys remember the first web, right? Web 1.0? And see, I have a 6-year-old, so that's supposed to be That's So Raven, but you wouldn't get that unless you... And thanks. See, somebody here gets it. And I also use the slide only because that is the best picture of Al Gore I've ever seen in my life. He's like golden. He's like he's got cocoa butter on. Then at the beach, he looks like a wax figure in that picture. That was definitely before the internet was just a glint in his eye. He is just poised for greatness in that photograph. But the first web was a lot of things, right? But it wasn't what it is today. It was a very static environment. And it was very hard to develop for. People had to have these commodity skills like HTML and web development, right? It was difficult, and it was a one-way platform. There was really nothing about collaboration built into the first web except for, surprise, e-commerce, right? That's what we figured out with this collaborative platform, which, by the way, we built with the federal government to empower open collaboration and to bridge the gap of platforms and everything else. The web was built for researchers to share their papers. And we sort of sat around and watched this thing. It was like the newspaper online. I remember at about 1995 or so, the USA Today, we were talking about this last night, and USA Today went to a twice-a-day update and just shocked the world. You could actually get news twice in the same day. You didn't have to wait for the next day to see what the heck was going on. Now, sit at USA Today, New York Times, or any of the other ones, and refresh, and you'll see new headlines literally every minute. The model has changed radically, but that was a tipping point, right? The newspaper news isn't just once a day. News is ongoing. It's going on all the time. Well, then you fast forward until, about 1999, 2000, we started to look at things in a different light, and this Web 2.0 stuff started to emerge, and now we're into a space where it's just everywhere, and Tim O'Reilly calls it the architecture of participation. So if Web 0.0 was simply commerce, Web 2.0 is collaboration. So if I simplify Web 2.0, it looks like this. It's easy, it's available, it's collaborative, and it's participation, right? So it's the ability. Now look at USA Today Now, okay? USA Today Now, instead of it just being news all day long, it's also your voice emerging in the news. and some of the more interesting content that you'll read online doesn't come from a traditional news source, right? It comes from you. Even if you look at CNN now, the actual television station, iReporters on every campus, right? That's how you find out things now, because we don't have enough reporters to do this, so it's citizen journalism, and that's a Web 2.0 sort of model, right? And for those of you who are Charlton Heston fans, and very few people get this, but you know, what does he say at the end of the movie? He runs running through the thing. It's people. Yeah, Soylent Green is people. Thank God somebody got it in the room. I just love it. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. But this says it all. You remember this year before last? Time Person of the Year was you, right? And it was you because you created. You were in control of the information age. And usually I have a video in here from Michael Wesch, who's a cultural anthropologist at Kansas State University. And if we have time at the end, I'll pull it back out and I'll show it to you. But basically his point is that we're creating the new web. And we're creating the web by creating links between content, by creating content in blogs, using social bookmarking sites to track everything. We're creating new connections that allow us to find things more easily, but more importantly, for things to rise to the top of search results, and we can move content around in a way that is just phenomenal. And it all starts with the fact that you guys are doing this. Now, as Person of the Year, I'm sure you're going to get some sort of bonus check or something like that. But so key Web 2.0 technologies, probably most of you have at least heard of these things. Some of you are participating. RSS, really simple syndication, lets you move content all over the internet in a really easy way. Podcasts, blogs, wikis, social bookmarking and tagging, photo sharing, social networking, which is a massive trend that we'll talk about on our campuses, and collaborative writing, just some key Web 2.0 technology. So at your next event, you can say, you know, what's your favorite Web 2.0 technology? You know, and you can have a couple here to go with. So our place in Web 2.0, right? Should we be passive or active in this scenario? And that's a really important question, because we can just ignore this stuff and move forward. We can just say, okay, it's a fad. The internet's really not going to stay, right? I saw a cover from Newsweek in 1995, and it said, you know, internet schminternet, you know, the fad that is the web or something like that. And like, of course, the next week Time ran an article that said, the internet's just, you know, just a passing fad. No one's ever going to connect to the internet. Who would ever want to do that? So do we have a plan as a part of our future? And these are clear and very important questions for all of us to address, whether we're in the IT side of the house or we're on the teaching side of the house. These are really critical questions. And if you look at Mark Prinsky, and a lot of people think he's a little played out, but at the same time, today's students are not the same ones our educational system was designed to teach. And I think that that's an important consideration when I go to where I'm going to go now. And Web 2.0, remember Web 2.0, people, collaborative, open, easy, agile, and I'm going to try to paint this philosophical connection to what I'll call School 2.0. And so this is a picture of my daughter with her back. I'm protecting her identity, clearly. That's my niece. I don't care. She's online. Doesn't make any difference to me, right? So let's look at how Web 2.0 philosophies are changing society and working to transform teaching and learning. So in a teaching and learning 1.0 model, right, we line our students up in rows. We have this very traditional view of expertise, this one, right? I stand up here, I talk, you listen, and probably I'll hand out a quiz at the end of this in the form of a Scantron, and you'll give me my key facts back, right? You know, ¿cómo estás? Right? You've been paying attention. Let me get your cap and gown. And students as mirrors. So, you know, we've seen this stuff, right? This is what our classrooms looked like, you know, back in the day. And, you know, they got a little better, right? At least there are two of them sitting together, you know. And it looks pretty familiar, right? It looks pretty familiar. And the picture I was looking for on Flickr was the turn-of-the-century sewing machine factory, right? Where you had people sitting in these rows behind machines as someone in the front directed them to do things. And now what have we built? We've built classrooms where students sit in rows, they sit behind machines while someone in the front of the room directs them. It's really a shame that our educational system hasn't evolved with the fact that students now do actually collaborate, they do create, and they're very agile learners, and they learn better from each other, right? So this is the traditional 1.0 model, right? The teacher stands in the middle and sends out this information, you know, and you give it right back to me, and then I give you a test, and that's that. And that's sort of a bad model, if you ask me. There's no extended conversation, nothing's going on. In a teaching and learning 2.0 model, we have something like this. You say, what rows? Who cares? Right? It doesn't make any difference. Expertise is gathered and shared because students are now asked to be amplifiers of what's going on. They're no longer mirrors. Their job is to take the message and push it around the room. So collaboration, this is one of my classrooms, so you see, they're still sort of in rows, but at least I've shifted the rows, I guess, and they're working with each other. But then they can go out and they can do this. Students have a tendency to do this, right? Michael, this slide's for you. More and more it's starting to look like this, right? And this is Second Life. And I'm not promoting it, but at the same time, I'm just saying that there's nothing really different between this and this when it really comes right down to it. In a School 2.0 model, it looks more like this. Instead of students reflecting information right back to one another, they're refracting it and amplifying it. The teacher sends it out, the conversation emerges, they use tools to create examples, artifacts of their learning, they push that around to their peers get it because guess where they go for help? They go to each other, right? They learn better from each other than they do from us in many ways. And that's hard to swallow, but it's actually pretty true. And it makes us have to rethink some things. We have these conversation starters. We have to inspire students to be digital through activity. And some of these trends I'm going to share with you are going to show you some new ways that students are using technologies to express themselves. You saw I said 18% of them are creating video for YouTube. They're doing it because they want to express themselves. And some of the new Pew data suggests that they do it because they want feedback. Surprise! They want people to respond. And Web 2.0 gives them other people the ability to watch, comment, and re-engage them in a larger conversation around the artifacts that they're producing. They actually learn better from each other. And this comes, this isn't just with teaching and learning. I mean, we ask about where do you go for help, students? Where do you go for help if your computer breaks? And we invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in help desk services. And overwhelmingly they say, oh, I go to my friend. Well, when do you go to help desk? Not a whole lot, right? Maybe if it's really something, if it's that wire in the wall, I'll do that. But if it's right here in front of me, I go to my peers and they actually help. Faculty do the same thing, right? Connected faculty want to find other faculty with like ideas. They work together to solve their challenges, and they learn better from each other. So if you look at students and opportunities, you can give them the same assignment and don't tell them to just turn in a paper. Give them the opportunity to do some different things. Let them use their blog to open up the conversation outside the classroom. Let them create a document on YouTube. Let them do a photo journal in Flickr and open it up to the world and see what happens. They want to do this stuff. And so then a lot of people say to me, but the tools are so hard, everything's so difficult, how do you expect me to do these kinds of things? And the real answer is choosing one small piece of what you do. Choose one activity in your classroom that is, that's difficult or a concept that you want to try to shift, and just make a change around that. Don't try to do the whole course replacement thing. And this isn't about e-learning, right? This isn't about building distance education. This is about what we're doing face-to-face with our students. What is one concept that you can walk back to your office and think critically about, that you could use a new and emerging piece of technology to engage your students in a different way? And at the end of the day, try to make your learning spaces fun, collaborative, and inspire discussion, but don't forget about rigor, because that's core to all of this. That's very important. So, with that said, and I try to blast through that as fast as I can to give you an idea of what their world is like. It's like the fire hose of content and information coming at them, but they just deal with it. So, 3 themes to consider Web 2.0 drivers. We're going to talk about social spaces, user-created content, and mobility. 3 things I think are really driving where we're headed in higher education and beyond, and industry as well. So social spaces, that's my Facebook page. How many of you guys are on Facebook? Okay, so like a quarter or a third. You're not on the Facebook? Oh my God, but you are. Okay. Will you be my friend on the Facebook? We'll see, right? So I bring it up in class and I show it to them, and they have their Facebook page up there. And I have my Facebook page up there, and then I hear laughter. And I'm like, what are you guys laughing about? And I'm like, you only have 83 friends. Right? I'm like, well, what's wrong with it? Oh yeah, thank you, because pumps my numbers. I'm up over 100 now. So that's cooler. But so at Penn State, how many friends do you think on average students have? 1,000? Wow, that's a lot. 150. Yeah, 285 about is the average number of students, or number of friends. And they don't know each other, but they're friends. But they know each other, right, in new ways. There are these new connections that are happening. And if you haven't been in the Facebook, go ahead and jump in there and get a friend or two and see what happens. It's this interesting model that begins to unfold there as you stay connected to to your peers in new ways. They don't really have to be friends, they're connections, but they do some interesting things. So I'll define social spaces very simply. Environments that enable profile creation. Okay, so I can say I like to play tennis, and when I say I like to play tennis, the word tennis instantly becomes a link to everyone else in my network who plays tennis without me doing anything. So my network is Penn State University. And I can click tennis and see all the other tennis players at Penn State. And from there I could filter it down and I could say, okay, show me just the people that are my friends who play tennis, and then I could say on my wall, I'm looking for someone to play tennis with from my network, and I can get some responses from people. So profile creation, right? My likes, dislikes, political perspectives, things like that. It actually drives people into new types of relationships, especially around big events like elections. You'll see a lot of election talk in the Facebook right now because you're putting it right up there. I'm liberal. And that brings people together around a cause. And it's very interesting when that happens. FOAF is friend of a friend. So once you and I become friends, I get access to your whole network. And then we have this extra circle of friends that we can create, right? And you expand your network. Ad hoc group formation. And this is interesting because I don't know about Blackboard, but Angel, creating a group, a study group from your Angel course is difficult, right? Here it's easy. And so guess what? They're moving pieces of their coursework into these environments because they're already all there. Connections and collaborations, you can send notes, emails, update your status. I just read something, as an aside, I read something really interesting, I think at the airport getting ready to come out here. It was about breaking up on the Facebook and how it's changed the whole dynamic of breakups, because the second you break up, you say, you know, Cole is no longer with so-and-so, and then all of a sudden it gets broadcast out to your entire network. And now people are getting like 1,000 sympathy emails back. And they say, oh, he's available. Let me see if I can. Doesn't really happen to me. I hate to report. Nationally, these are some numbers. 75 to 85% of college students are in the Facebook. In here, there was about a third, maybe, in the Facebook. 83% of students are in the Facebook. Yes?
Facebook and MySpace, huge difference.
You know, I took my MySpace pages, my MySpace slides out. Facebook is definitely geared at the college age student. MySpace is definitely a more open social network. It allows for much broader sort of web page creation and things like that. And you know, Facebook is changing as well. You're right. But MySpace, and if you really want to know the difference, so at Penn State, at University Park, 95% of our students are in the Facebook. At the campus locations, drags this number down. And there are very big social, there are basically there are social and political reasons why, socioeconomic reasons why people choose Facebook over MySpace. And the person, if you want to really learn about that, Dana Boyd is a researcher. She does tremendous work on gender and social differences between Facebook and MySpace. And so it's interesting. So University Park typically is, you know, a little bit of a higher socioeconomic student that comes into our UP campuses. The other one's much higher on the Facebook. So there are differences, and there are differences in features and functionalities and things like that. But the real difference, I think, at least at the beginning, was Facebook was built around networks, and networks were college-based. I had to have a psu.edu email address to get into my Facebook. That's opened up now, and it's changed. Yeah.
Would you say most people that have a Facebook, though, would have a MySpace page? It's almost like,
Yeah,
you get
I would say
one,
most
you end up
people.
with the other. I mean,
I have both, but the only reason I have the MySpace is so I could claim colecampolice.myspace so somebody else didn't do it, right? Which people are starting to do now. They're starting to claim other people's identities online, which is something we'll talk about, identities, yeah. But this is where it gets freaky with the Facebook, is the amount of time they spend there, right? 60% log in daily, and 80% update their profiles once a month, or several times a month. And these are self-reported numbers at Penn State. And so they're self-reporting that they're doing this. This was a letter from this kid at the University of Michigan, Stephen, who somehow got locked out of his Facebook account. And his quote was, "I just can't be a college student without Facebook." Right? And the response to that, what other brands have this loyalty? And the author of this article flippantly said heroin is the only other thing that actually locks you in like the Facebook does. And you start to look at this. I did leave this in. So 50% of students have MySpace accounts at Penn State. Okay? The difference maker here is that just a few years ago, you couldn't get a Facebook account until you were in college. And so now that happens in high school. So most of the kids that started with MySpace were starting in high school. Now they can start with Facebook in high school. And so you're going to probably see, I believe, a decline in the kinds of use MySpace users take advantage of, and they'll move that activity into the Facebook. But this is the real killer. About a quarter of our students at Penn State, a quarter of our students spend more than 5 hours a week in these spaces. Okay? More than 5 hours a week connected in their social networking environment. And it makes us ask some questions. You wonder what the average stats are for our course websites. I'm sure Blackboard can tell you how long your students are spending in their course website. And of course that varies by if it's a traditional student or it's a returning adult. I mean, those numbers are radically different, right? We know that. I'm sure it's the same here. The school websites, at the library, in classrooms, and studying, and we know how much time they spend studying. You know, for every 3-credit course, they may study about an hour a week, self-reporting. They take 4 courses, 5 courses, so that means they're spending essentially about the same amount of time on the Facebook as they are studying. Facebook's free. Penn State's the most expensive public institution in the country, so there's a value system thing there. But this trend will continue. This is something that isn't going to stop. It may not be Facebook tomorrow, but it will be something else. And this tells me something. It tells me that students are really willing to spend a lot of time online in environments if they are social and they're connected and they can do things there that make sense to them. And if we can figure out ways to use environments like that, I'm not saying use Facebook as your learning management system, but there are lessons to be learned in these environments for sure. There are major identity concerns. Those are actually 2 of my students' pictures up there. Not great pictures. They took them down once they realized when they went to career services, and the counselors there told them, you know, they're looking at your Facebook account now to find out if you should be there. But for the first time last year, about 72% reported using the privacy features. So they're beginning to get it. But the reason I bring this up is because identity is core now to all of this. And you think about identity online, and identity used to be like when we introduced ourselves, we shook hands, that was as much as we'd know about each other. But I can go back now and I can Google you, and I can piece together what we'll call a meta identity from your Facebook profile, from the bookmarks you save on Delicious, from the photographs that you take and tag on Flickr, right? Everything you have in all of your social networks now add up to create your identity. And so identity is this important theme that should be running through everything we're talking to students about. It gets even crazier when they start going into places like Second Life and can impose brand new identities through their avatars. So there is this really strange thing. I mean, it used to be like this. The Keystone Trailer Company, that was that guy's identity. That was it. His name badge was it. It had nothing to do with his social presence online. So what I'm trying to say is make this a part of the conversation regardless of the subject. This is not a freshman seminar topic. This is something that every time you have a course where you start talking about or pushing them to do something online, remind them that that identity is going to follow them around forever, as we were talking about last night with what rises to the top, right? The most off-colored comment rises to the top, not all the great things that you've said throughout your career. So what they say, why they use it, we had a big panel. We led this panel discussion with them around why they use Facebook, and the number one they said is because it's not controlled by you. And that was in response to, what if we built you a Facebook just for Penn State? And they laughed at us, and they said, good luck. And there's that last one again, right? We talked about what they can do on the outside. I can express myself with ease. It's easy in this environment. I can log in, what am I doing right now, and I can share that information with my entire network. You say, okay, so what? Well, there are a lot of so whats here. And the big one is that these connected communities change the speed at which conversations are created, right? And information can be disseminated. I'll give you two examples. Virginia Tech, the tragedy that happened on the Virginia Tech campus. Within hours of that, there was tens of thousands of students at Penn State who created a Facebook group for Penn State students for Virginia Tech. And within hours of that, the administration at Penn State got wind of this thing, and collectively, literally within hours of it, right before the Penn State spring game, you can't see that up there, but that block in the middle actually has the Virginia Tech symbol in it, and that's our student section at the Penn State blue and white game, where it usually says S in blue and white for Penn State, has the flying VT. The university saw this and within hours bought 8,500 t-shirts for students, and they self-organized this within about 12 to 16 hours of the Virginia Tech shootings. So now that may have happened, right? That may have happened. It may have taken a week or 2 weeks for this to develop. But you can imagine what goes on there. And I'll give you another story then. And we're recording this, right? So I got to be careful with this one. So the Penn State football ticket lottery. This year, we decided to change the way football tickets were allocated. And I don't know if you've heard of Penn State. We got this guy, Joe Paterno. He's sort of a big deal. He's a young guy. He's just running around, sort of a young guy. But, it's a big deal. We get 110,000 people in this football stadium every week. It's been sold out for 20-some years. So we decided, let's change the way we allocate tickets to students. Within hours, the biggest group we've ever seen on Facebook emerges, right? The president, the provost, Joe Paterno, the athletic director were getting 35 to 50 emails a minute because they organized on the Facebook. Now again, that may have happened, right? What would have happened? The Collegian would have written, no, that's our student newspaper, they would have written, an op-ed piece or something. And several weeks later, they would have said, meet on the lawn of Old Main, and we're going to march to Old Main, right? And that would have been a Thursday, and Thursday happens to be the day that they go downtown to the bars early, so, only about 12 of them would have shown up, and then it would have rained, and only 5 of them would have been there, and maybe it wouldn't have happened. The next day, there was a reversal of the policy. So, you don't think, yeah, okay, big deal, these social communities. But information is moving at a pace that we have to get our heads wrapped around. And those are just two little instances. And guess what? They're moving their coursework into those environments with or without us. And that goes back to the TiVo of responses, right? Well, why haven't you gotten back to me? Well, I just got the text message right now. Okay. So those are social spaces. That's trend number 1. Trend number 2 is user-created content. What is all this stuff? And basically what it says is that, the audience is no longer the passive component of the story. That students in this age range, they're not just consumers of rich media, they're actually the producers of it. They're the producers of it. Nearly 50% of online teens are actively sharing their content online, and that's according to Pew. Only about 20% of adults do that thing. And this is where we get back to those Web 2.0 things, blogging, social video, social photos, and so much more. 64% of them engage in at least one form of content creation. And this is really incredible to me because before I was in education technology services, I was in the College of Information Sciences and Technology, where one of the things that we looked at on a regular basis was gender and their use of technology. And so this goes back, I think, to the Alan Kay quote of technology is only technology to those born before technology. But you see this shift here that girls dominate most of online content creation. Girls traditionally drop out of science, mathematics, and technology at about grade 6. So this is a reversal in that, where girls are actually more active in the participation in this space, probably because it doesn't look and feel like technology. It's easy to express myself, essentially. Now, that last one I don't know about, but boys are twice as likely to have posted videos online. We're not going to go there. Well, why? And this is what they report. They love that conversation. They love it, right? Nearly half of these people that post content online or photos online post it where other people can see it. They want people to see their pictures because 90% of them report that people comment on them some of the time. Now, this is creating an interesting social dynamic in schools and in classrooms, and there's this marketing of identity going on. They're walking into their classrooms and in their schoolyards, and they're saying, hey, did you see the pictures I put on Flickr yesterday? Did you see the pictures I put online from the Facebook thing? So they're actively marketing not only their face-to-face persona, but they're actually actively creating their meta-identity. And they're using technology to do it. And this is great. They use a whole host of modes to communicate: cell, text, IM, and email. If you're like us, most of your students walk around campus like this. These aren't broken. They're text messaging one another, right? And I just did that so I could get my iPhone out again because it's the coolest thing ever. But we asked them, how do you do it? And they say, okay, well, we call on the phone, we text. IM, they don't really see as really anything other than just the fact of life. IM is a utility. They have 8 or 9 of them running at the same time. That's how they get their peer-related information from one another. And in email, we said, well, when do you use email? And what did they tell us? When we communicate with old people. Yeah. And I sat there after I asked the question, and I was like, well, who are these old people? And she just sort of looked at me like, I'm just saying that maybe, might be you. It's like, yeah, that's true. So, sending them an email doesn't really work, does it? Blogging in the personal content management environment is what I'll call it, but we all have the ability to be publishers. Single-click online content creation is the way it is now. It's no longer this HTML thing, and I'm going to show you the traditional web publishing. This is what's amazing. A third of teens online web pages are blogs, and a third of college students have blogs. Stunned me when I saw that. Gender blogging, again, females are much more likely to blog than men are. Technorati, which tracks blogs online. This is old data. This is March 07. This number is now well over 100 million web blogs tracked. But at this point, there were 70 million blogs tracked, now over 100 million. And what's interesting about that is that if you were like me back in the day, in 1995 or 96, you got your first ISP and your modem, and you put up your first web page, and it had that animated GIF of the guy with the shovel. Have you seen that, under construction, that you stole from somebody else online? And then it stayed like that for months and months and months. I think if you go and find my original web domain, there's still that guy digging that hole, because it was hard. But the difference with blogs is people that start and they get over about this 4 or 5 week hurdle, they continue to write. And I don't know if you've read your students' writings recently, they could use some practice. And that's not, I'm not trying to be flippant, I mean, it's the truth. If you're writing every day, even if you're just sharing thoughts, you're writing. And that's a really important move forward for all of us. Lots of possibilities. Blogs, I call them personal content management systems. We're using them on our campus for all sorts of things now. ePortfolio, probably the most powerful, is we're getting people to track their intellectual development over 4 years in a blog using categories. You can do it, it's easy, right? Course conversation, note management, podcasting, team workspaces, faculty course pages. Nobody needs to know HTML. Teaching with blogs, I'll tell you this really quick story because I'm running out of time. I used to run the Pennsylvania Governor's School for Information Technology on our campus. It was money that came directly from the governor. We'd bring 75 students, juniors in high school going to their senior year over summer, 75 of them, best and brightest from the state, for a 5-week residency program at Penn State to engage in information technology stuff. It was really about how the social issues of information technology were shaping them. It was a really amazing program. And usually we'd have 1, 2, 3 students with perfect SAT scores. So these were heady students. So in my class, I was the only one that would teach all 75 of them. And I would bring once a week a guest lecture in at night. And one week I brought in the head of the FBI's unit for cybercrime. And one of the things I did, I put all the kids in teams, and every team had a blogger who had to take notes and sort of reflect on what was going on. And they post that live on the internet, right? So this guy's doing his thing. The next morning I get up, the academic director of the program emails me and says, "You got to look at what they wrote on the blogs. This is ugly." And I went, and it was, the federal government is a mess. They're tracking our every step. This guy's, he's brutal. It's just this terrible stuff about this guy. I'm thinking, what are we going to do? Well, guess what happened? Later that day, I don't know if you know this, the FBI can find stuff, especially the director for cyber crime stuff. So what did he do? He went out, got accounts on all the blogs, and commented on every single student post. Thoughtful comment on every single post. Unbelievable. Then what happened is over the next 3 weeks on these blogs, they continued to have a dialogue with this guy. And somewhere in about the second week, they started to come together, right? He said, maybe my presentation was too harsh. Maybe I shouldn't, when I talk to students, talk about the punishment. Maybe I should talk about what's really going on. And the students said, maybe we've been a little too immature and too quick to judge the severity of what's going on here. They voted to have him come back, and he spoke on the last day of the PGSIT. Now, there's something really powerful when you experience that for the first time, right? And so you see this classroom, and that's a teacher looking out, right? Now imagine if there were no door there. And that conversation can happen all the time. Because that's what went on, right? This 1-hour presentation where this guy sounded like a jerk, and these students ripped him. He came back and engaged them for another 3 weeks in an ongoing discussion that changed both of their perspectives, and real learning happened. That doesn't happen inside of Moodle or Blackboard or Angel or anything else because they're walled gardens, right? So there is something really powerful to the whole teaching with blog thing. There's also something powerful about this. The traditional web publishing model looks like this. If you've ever built a web page, you know you have to use text editors or Dreamweaver or something like that you have to learn, right? And you make these HTML files. And those HTML files, by the way, look like this, which, by the way, we don't write like that. And then you have to name them right, index.html, and put them in a folder, and don't put spaces. And for God's sakes, don't mix the caps, because you'll never be able to link to stuff. and so forth and so on. And then you got your files. Now you have to get them online. So then you have to learn this other program, FTP or SFTP, or mount these shares and then move these files up there, right? And then we write apps like this to publish. This is our publishing system. This is our Pass Explorer at Penn State. And if I ask my students to do a web page, it takes me 2 weeks, I'm not kidding, to explain how to move their files online. I mean, what the hell does any of that mean? I mean, the geeks in the basement know how to do this, but no one else should have to know how to do it. And then we get this, and then you can look at it, and you realize it's all wrong, and you have to start over. The blog model looks like this. You start with the browser, you authenticate, basically you assert your identity, right? Hi, I'm Cole. You type, and you publish. And that's a much more clean path to actually getting your thoughts online than going through this whole convoluted technical thing to publish online. It's a whole different way of looking at things when you step back and look at the ease of publishing. Social media, yep, that's me on YouTube. And no, I didn't post that. I made one of my staff members do it, because if I posted it, it would have just been vain. But yeah, but I'll tell you this, and I shouldn't, but so that's Channel 10 News, the local news. They came and interviewed me for podcasting, and we stayed up late to watch it. Channel News 10 at 10, 2 kids, that's late. And we're watching it, and I said to my wife, I need to lose some weight. And she said, yeah, maybe more than a little. And I said, but well, the camera adds, 10, 15 pounds. And she asked me how many cameras they had pointed at me. It's not nice. It's not nice. And then you laugh, which means it's true. That was that nervous laughter, though, right? Right. Okay, so look at this. Creation and consumption. 85% of young broadband users watch video online regularly. Right? They watch it online. 62 have watched YouTube. 19% have posted. We have 18% posting at Penn State. And they're starting to say things like, boy, mainstream media is really interesting, but the amateur stuff is better. And these cameras now are under $150, and they can produce stuff, and most of the machines have this stuff in them. In the month of December, internet users watched 10 billion videos online. Yep, because of the writer's strike. Remember that thing where TV just stopped? And it sparked a whole new internet boom with content, which is ironic because one of the roots of the writer's strike was the repurposing of content online for internet video, but that's a whole other. The social part is what makes it go. If you're a fan of Star Wars at all, you have to watch Chad Vader. Chad Vader is Darth Vader's younger brother. He doesn't run a galactic empire. He's a day clerk manager at a grocery store. And it's brilliant. It's amateur stuff. But what's really cool about it is not Chad Vader. What's really cool about it is, and I don't know if you can see it, but this one, when I snapped this one, had 4,250,000 views. And even more interesting, though, are the responses that people make back to the people who build it. So with their little web cameras, they actually build on the story, and they take the time to move it forward or to fork the story and take it in different directions. It's absolutely unbelievable. Social photography is another one. This is huge. I point out Flickr only because it's good, it's grown up, and it's really powerful. But Facebook is the #1 photo sharing site online, not Flickr. Lots of people, even at our school, at our university, are starting to teach with Flickr. Flickr gives some really amazing things that we used to use. If any old school multimedia developers in the room, Authorware and Director to draw like hotspots. Remember hotspots? And you could click and it would pop up more information. Well, this stuff just does it. So Flickr is really important. So what? 1/3 of young people have online and tag content for future reference. It's important. It changes the way information is organized, trusted, managed, created, and it's just really something else. I'm moving fast now. Mobility, that's that guy Joe I was telling you about. That's Joe Paterno. I think it's the greatest picture because I don't know if he's upset at losing to Michigan again or by looking at all these devices spread out in front of him. It's hard to tell, but it's just an absolutely fantastic photograph. So I'll define mobile devices as iPods, cell phones, digital still video cameras, and content devices, and I'd add laptops into that as well because they're mobile devices. That image on the right is of the 426,000 of these we throw away a day, but nationally 73% of adults own cell phones, 63% of teens, and at Penn State 93% of our students own cell phones, 93%. I'll go quickly through this, but one thing you should take notice here is the different age, the demographics over here, and the features that they want or need to have with their phones, as opposed to us, right? They want to be able to text, they want to be able to take pictures, and they want to be able to post them online. We don't seem to care about that. We think that they're for making telephone calls. Digital cameras is another mobile device. 62% of young adults own them, and we complain about doing things with them in the classroom, about going out and taking pictures and recognizing things, because so we say they don't have them, but let's think about their cell phones and think about Flickr. And Flickr, which a lot of professional photographers store their stuff there, the number 5, 6, and 18 most popular cameras on Flickr are cell phone specific. So they're actually walking around with devices in their pocket that are devices that we used to have to purchase centrally and spend tens of thousands of dollars to let them use them. MP3 ownership is another big, amazing number in this demographic, 12 to 17-year-olds. If you have kids, you probably either bought one this Christmas or last, or are getting ready to pony up for a brand new iPod Touch. It's just the way it is. On our campus, 87% of Penn State students own an MP3 player. This is last year's data. And I was part of a group that worked with Apple. I don't know, you remember when Duke bought all their incoming freshmen iPods? Remember that a couple years ago? They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on it, and most of them already had them. You can take that out of the recording, can't you? Thanks. Well, the interesting thing here is that at Penn State, okay, so iPod is this 47% category. We were a Napster campus when this was going on, and Napster meant we had a legal downloading service with music, not compatible with iPods. And yet the brand is so powerful that half of them bought the device that they couldn't take the music with them on. Pretty incredible. Podcasting, more than just audio on the web. We sort of know this, right? Because audio on the web's been around since like 1995. You can click on a link and listen to something. It's this subscription model with podcasting that's so important. So the traditional way that you would deliver a piece of rich media, audio, video, or PDF is you'd upload it into Blackboard, right? And then students would have to go there and log in and find their course and go to the place and find the right file and then download it. With podcasting, you could attach that to a blog post, and students could subscribe once, visit your blog once, and every time you added a new rich media file, it would automatically come down to their desktop. So they wouldn't have to log in and get it, just boom, it just comes down to them. And then if it's audio or video, it moves to their mobile device and they can take it with them. We've been doing podcasting at Penn State for a while, but fall 2006 was our first pilot. We found this. The most important thing that I think here is the last point that over half of them reported that it helped them be better prepared for class or online discussions. And those weren't online discussions in a traditional online course. They were just, the message boards that we use in our resident and education courses. So a year later, we had this. Over 3,000 course podcasts produced by faculty. And you say this stuff is, hard and magic happens somewhere in the middle. We literally didn't spend any time with any of these faculty to do this. So it's a very simple process. We put some technology in some rooms, and things just seem to happen. It's pretty amazing. The other thing that goes on are podcast shows, 520 podcast shows, and those are colleges, departments. I know you guys are well represented on iTunes U, so I don't have to tell you that. So you know about this. If you don't know about this, go to iTunes and click on the little iTunes U tab, and you'll see dozens of universities, but even more importantly now, there's content from all over the place coming into this thing. Laptops, we're going to be friends, right? On Facebook? Okay. Sweet, man. The important thing here is that most of them own laptops, but only a third of them carry them. You guys are sitting here, you see these little desks? They're not really built for supporting laptops, and I don't see any power or data underneath of them. You're not alone, by the way. It's the way that it is everywhere, right? We haven't built the environment to support these things for them yet. This is sort of the last thing I'll talk about, though. Content is king, and this is, there's the iPhone again. You just can't get away from it. That's a mobile app. That's called Zinio, and with Zinio, you can click on that magazine cover and read the magazine. And it can be delivered right to your device on the fly, either over a Wi-Fi connection or a cell connection. Amazon Kindle, have you guys heard about this thing? It's a book reader, and that's important, but what's really more important is that it's Wi-Fi, and it has a store associated with it, so acquiring new content on the fly is now a reality for the written word. So imagine in a few years when we can actually get together with publishing companies and disaggregate textbooks and students can acquire content on the fly. I mean, I don't know how much your students pay for textbooks on an average on a semester base, but it's like $800, I think, at Penn State is the average textbook bill. And then we assign a chapter out of one of those textbooks. It's brutal. So what? Access has changed completely, right? Anytime, anywhere access. Mobile devices get you into anything, anywhere. We're putting wireless everywhere. The notion of presence is altered in a way. You think about the fact that with this phone, here it is again, I can take a picture of you right now. Oh, yes. See? You show me, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. Right? I can take a picture of this, and I can post it online to Flickr via my phone and write a little description of what went on here, and my staff back in University Park, Pennsylvania, can feel as though they're part of this discussion. And that's a revolutionary thing, right? Conversations never end. I told you about the PGSIT example. And the creation, acquisition, and consumption of media has become an on-the-go activity, and that's going to become even more so in the coming year or two. So what I'll leave you with are these. These seem pretty obvious, but the things that I want you to walk away with is that all this technology is wonderful, but unless you're engaging your students in the way that they crave to be engaged, and that is through interaction and feedback and solid pedagogy, they're not going to feel any different about it. They're not going to show up either way. I mean, so it's about evolving your thinking with your teaching to integrate some of these environments, but to really pull some of the philosophical underpinnings of them out. And that's what I hope you got from this, is that I'm not a proponent of technology for technology's sake. What I think is more important about the Web 2.0 movement are the philosophical underpinnings, the openness, the collaborative kinds of opportunities that these technologies provide, and rethinking what we're doing. But obviously, just as we figured it out, we'll be right back here next year asking the same questions. So that's what I'll leave you with. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. I don't know if I have time for a question or two, but yeah. The guy, you're second. The guy, there's one guy right behind you.
So, I teach general chemistry, and I try to get the students to use the discussion boards extensively, but
Right.
it's kind of hit or miss. Maybe about a quarter of the students use it. So if I just switch to Facebook, instead of discussion board, would that help facilitate?
No, probably not. But and I'm gonna give you a plug. I'm gonna give a plug over here. If you talk to these folks down here, right, they may be able to help you think about some of those things. And I would say it's a combination of a couple of things. I mean, having a Facebook group for your class may not be a bad thing, and it may help drive a few more percentage points of students into the discussion. You might want to try a class blog. I've found that opens up discussion in a way that discussion forums haven't in the past. So it's really doing some exploration. And don't be afraid to sort of, that didn't work, and move on to the next thing. And I understand the whole pressure for tenure, promotion, and wherever anybody is in that. And so you don't want to play too much with technology, but know that there are things that you can tweak in small doses to make differences. And I think that the discussion forum is really, I hope nobody gets angry at me for saying this, but is sort of a dying technology to drive conversation in classrooms because they're used to a much more open framework for discussion. That's just my own personal impression. Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of research just to figure out actually what you're talking about now, and I'm having a hard time understanding what are pingbacks, linkbacks, and trackbacks. What is this?
Why don't you send me an email and we'll cover that. That's a much lengthier conversation. Essentially, pingbacks and trackbacks allow blogs to know that other blogs are talking about them. Okay, so like a trackback, like if you comment on my blog and you link it and I have trackbacks enabled, your blog will show up on mine as a comment to that post. And it'll basically tracks back to me and gives me a pointer back to you.
Give you like an alert or an email?
Yeah, it comes in like a comment would come in. It would alert me to it just like that. Okay. But if you want to know more, I mean, Cole at psu.edu and I can. Okay.
I gotta go now.
Okay. I'll answer you tonight. I'll try to do it like in 5 minutes. Okay.
I'll text you.
Okay, sweet. 2 more. One here, and then we'll do that one, right? Is that okay? Okay.
Does Penn State have any support system for students to create multimedia?
Yes.
for their classes?
I didn't talk about that, but so my group this past year, we created this initiative we call the Digital Commons at Penn State. The Digital Commons puts digital media studios at every campus location of the university. So we are 12 or 13 campuses into putting high-end digital media studios at every campus. What do those mean? Well, we put in 2 high-end Macs with all the software. It's all centrally managed. So, and this is really important because at our campuses, IT support is very different. So at our campuses, those machines actually sit on our University Park network and are managed centrally. So the local IT staff doesn't have to touch them. Then we put in green screens, high-definition cameras, lighting kits, microphone kits. It's all supported centrally by this thing called the Digital Commons Community Hub. That's digitalcommons.psu.edu. And it has tutorials, examples, student galleries, all those kinds of things. And then I've hired staff. I have 2 full-time staff that travel the state and visit each studio once a month to do workshops. And we did that at University Park as well. And we used to have a room we called Studio 204, which was just a room that students could go into. With Digital Commons, we have about a 50% increase in student traffic in 1 year in digital media. Now, what's interesting about that is that faculty are now feel confident in assigning digital media activities, right? That's the difference maker, is now they can say, go be digital, and I don't have to teach you the digital stuff. I'm going to worry about political science or business, supply and demand, right, or whatever else you want to pitch. But you see what I'm getting at is so that the supported facilities are really there so faculty can feel confident in sending their students out to be engaged in these kinds of things. So it's part of our value chain, critical. There was one back here that I have to get to, sorry.
Can you comment on how to engage graduate students who may be a little bit older than your traditional undergraduate student? Because, they face some of the same challenges we do.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And how do you effectively integrate some technology into the traditional classroom
Okay.
for graduate students?
Again,
Picking and fighting.
I'll give you a handful of things that we do. And I should say that no one of these things is the answer. It's when you take them and you stack them up that you actually get towards adoption. The first thing we do is we have this thing called the TWT, Teaching with Technology Certificate Program, where it's designed to prepare graduate students to go out and teach, but teach in a digital sense. And we have staff that are assigned to working with graduate students around that. And so it's actually a certificate program that we do with the graduate program. That's been relatively successful. We have a TLA program, a Teaching and Learning or Technology Learning Assistance Program, and that's at both the undergraduate and the graduate level. And it's a class that we bring in either graduate students or undergraduate students that we teach them all of these things, blogs, podcasting, how you do all this stuff. And then those folks become employees of our group, and then they're sent out to work hand-to-hand with other faculty. So they learn it in the classroom, and then we assign them to other faculty who request them, so they learn through teaching as well. So that's another thing we do. Our training group, we do Summerfest, Winterfest, and Spring Break Fest. It's really targeted at faculty and graduate students, and that's week-long training in all of this stuff, plus other things, so we bring them in and do those things. And then I'll just tell you a quick personal story. I'm actually teaching a graduate class right now in the College of Education, Disruptive Technologies for Teaching and Learning. It's a cool class to teach. 20 grad students, they all came in and said, I don't want to learn this stuff. I'm not going to use it. About 4 weeks later, they're all blogging. They all have Twitter accounts. I have about 8 of them in Las Vegas at a conference right now, and I know what they're doing because they're sending me blog updates throughout the day. They're taking pictures and posting them on Flickr, and it took them about 3 weeks. There's sort of this curve I've noticed with grad students. It's like this, the first couple of weeks, it's like, this is the dumbest stuff I've ever seen in my life. And then someone leaves a comment on their blog, and then it goes, this is so awesome. I am a rock star. There's one person on the internet that commented. So it's persistence, really, in a lot of ways. And they're gonna push back on you because it is different and it's more difficult. But we've sort of ignored that and we've just pushed them through it. And now they've become sort of it's become part of what they do on a daily basis, and it's changed. So we have programmatic things, and then we sort of have this philosophical thing going where we just say stick with it. We do some other things, but that's what I'll go with.
Thank you, Cole, very much.
Sure.
Appreciate you coming from Penn State.
Thank you. Thank you.